The European Union has taken a historic step in 2025 by approving its new Migration and Asylum Pact, a decision that could reshape the future of migration, asylum, and border control across the continent. This new pact is being described as the EU's most ambitious attempt to address one of the most divisive issues of the past decade: how to fairly and effectively manage the flow of migrants and refugees. But what exactly does this pact mean? How will it affect refugees, international students, workers, and EU citizens themselves? And why is it being called both a necessary compromise and a harsh reality at the same time? In this video, we'll break down the new Migration Pact, explain its key rules, show who wins and who loses, and explore how this agreement could change the future of Europe. Migration has long been a sensitive and divisive issue in the European Union. Since 2015, the EU has faced repeated migration crises, particularly during the Syrian civil war, the conflict in Afghanistan, and instability in parts of Africa. In 2015 alone, over 1.3 million people sought asylum in Europe, creating enormous pressure on border countries like Greece, Italy, and Spain. While Germany and Sweden opened their doors to refugees, other nations like Hungary and Poland resisted, creating a deep political divide. The EU's asylum system, known as the Dublin Regulation, required that asylum seekers register in the first EU country they entered. This placed disproportionate pressure on frontline states, while wealthier nations further north often carried fewer responsibilities. For years, leaders debated a fairer distribution system, but nationalist politics, security concerns, and lack of unity prevented agreement. By 2025, however, migration pressures have only increased. Climate change, economic instability, and conflict continue to push people toward Europe. With public opinion demanding solutions, the EU finally approved its new Migration Pact this year. The EU New Migration Pact 2025 is a comprehensive agreement aimed at strengthening border control, speeding up asylum processing, sharing responsibility more fairly among EU countries. Key features of the pact: mandatory solidarity mechanism. All EU countries must contribute to managing migration. Nations can either accept a quota of asylum seekers or provide financial and logistical support to countries handling arrivals. Faster asylum procedures. Processing times will be shortened to prevent years-long waiting. Some applications may be fast-tracked at the border. Stricter border screening. Migrants entering irregularly will undergo security, health, and identity checks at EU borders within days. Return system. Those whose asylum claims are rejected will face faster deportations, coordinated at the EU level rather than leaving individual countries to handle it. Protection for vulnerable groups. Minors and families will be given special protections, though critics argue these are still insufficient. The pact represents a compromise. It demands responsibility from all EU members while still tightening security. The pact has been celebrated by EU leaders in Brussels as a breakthrough. Countries like Germany, France, Spain, and Italy supported the pact, seeing it as a way to finally ease pressure on border nations. European Commission officials argue the pact will make asylum faster, fairer, and more humane, while restoring public trust. Some humanitarian organizations cautiously welcome the pact, noting that at least it ends years of deadlock. Supporters believe the pact will prevent uncontrolled arrivals, stop smugglers and traffickers, ensure that no country is left alone in handling migration, provide clarity for migrants and refugees about their chances. For centrist and pro-European politicians, the pact is being presented as proof that the EU can take collective action on its toughest challenges. But the pact is not without controversy. Countries like Hungary and Poland strongly oppose being forced to either accept migrants or pay financial contributions. They argue that the pact undermines national sovereignty. Human rights groups say the pact focuses too much on detention and deportation rather than true protection for refugees. Critics also worry that border screening procedures could lead to inhumane conditions, with large-scale detention camps at EU borders. Organizations like Amnesty International warn that the pact risks creating a fortress Europe, where the main goal is to keep people out rather than provide sanctuary. Meanwhile, migrant communities fear that faster deportations and stricter checks will reduce their chances of being accepted, even for those fleeing real dangers. In short, While the pact solved the political deadlock in Brussels, it may spark new conflicts on the ground. For migrants, the new pact will mean a very different experience. Quicker decisions. No more waiting for years in legal limbo. Claims will be processed in months, or sometimes even weeks. Higher rejection risk. Fast-tracked border procedures may mean fewer chances to appeal. More burden sharing. Migrants may be relocated from Italy or Greece to other EU countries, creating uncertainty about where they will ultimately settle. Deportation system. Those rejected will face swift removal, making it harder to disappear into Europe without papers. Family protection. Families and minors will still have some protections, though NGOs argue they remain vulnerable to detention. For asylum seekers, this pact represents both hope and fear. Hope that decisions will finally be quicker. Fear that the outcome may increasingly be rejection and return. For Europe itself, the pact could have long-lasting consequences. Unity versus division. While Brussels celebrates a deal, divisions remain. Countries refusing solidarity payments could spark future political clashes. Border infrastructure. The EU will need to invest heavily in new border facilities, staff, and technology. Public opinion. Europeans divided over migration may either welcome the tougher stance or criticize it as too harsh. International relations. The pact also depends on agreements with non-EU countries to take back deported migrants, which could affect foreign policy. The pact may provide short-term stability, but its long-term success will depend on how it is enforced, and whether it truly balances humanity with security. The EU's new pact does not exist in isolation. Around the world, other countries are also tightening migration rules. UK. Post-Brexit, the UK has restricted dependent visas and tightened asylum rules. Canada. Still more open but introducing higher financial requirements. Australia. Focused on offshore processing and strict borders. USA. Increasingly using fast-track deportations and stricter asylum screening. In this global context, the EU's pact reflects a broader trend. Nations balancing humanitarian ideals with political pressure to control migration. The European Union New Migration Pact 2025 is both a victory and a compromise. For the EU, it marks the end of years of political deadlock and a chance to show unity. For border states like Greece and Italy, it promises relief. For migrants, it offers quicker decisions, but also harsher realities. Whether this pact succeeds or fails will depend on how it is implemented. Will it truly create a fairer system? Or will it simply create a faster, stricter, and less humane Europe? One thing is clear. Migration will remain one of the defining challenges of our time. The EU's new pact is not the final answer. It is only the beginning of a new chapter. So, what do you think? Is this pact a necessary compromise to protect Europe's future? Or is it a betrayal of Europe's humanitarian values? Share your thoughts in the comments below.